Well, welcome back to the Writer's Parachute, where we are guiding author and writer dreams to a perfect landing. And we are back again today with a new guest. We have with us today Jonathan Gunson. He is an author, illustrator, and literacy advocate, joining us all the way from New Zealand. It is actually another day for him, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So before we get started, of course, we want to do a little bit of housekeeping. Don't forget to share, like, and follow the Writer's Parachute. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Writer Parachute with no S. You can also follow us and subscribe to the Writer's Parachute on YouTube, and we are available on most podcasting channel platforms. So please be sure to check us out, share it, like it, come follow us. We always have interesting conversations. So today we're going to have just a little bit of the chat. Last month we talked about self-care. This month we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming event and award season for authors. So there are so many events out there starting in spring, running through the summer and into the fall. There are many awards available to authors and writers, even self-published authors and writers that are out there. And so we're going to try and create a list. So I would love for you to go to the chat, to the notes, to the show notes, and leave us a note that says what event or award you would like to suggest to the audience, what ones you have participated in that you thought were well run, that did well for you, any awards that you run. I myself have participated in the Story Monsters Inc. They have a magazine, that catalog that goes out to children's, to schools, librarians, and parents about books in the children's book market, which I work in. They also have an award program and a book certification program called the Dragonfly Awards. So hope that helps you. I really do like what they're doing. They offer their catalog and magazine free to teachers and librarians in schools. So I hope that you add something to the chat. So let's go ahead and move on. And just to make sure that you remember that we do have all the links at the bottom of the show notes. Anytime that we mention a link, we will put that in the show notes so you can check those after the end of the podcast. Also, we want to remind you, well, I just lost my place. So, we just want to remind you to go follow us again. So today we want to welcome our guest. With us is Jonathan Gunson. He is an author, illustrator, and literacy advocate. Jonathan lives far, far away in the lush green South Pacific paradise known as New Zealand, where Lord of the Rings movies were made. His brother Tim played a Hobbit in the movies. Wow, okay. He's been creating stories and pictures for over 30 years, including over 100 television commercials and several television series like The Boy from Andromeda, alongside writing and illustrating children's picture book. You can see his work on the Andromeda series at jonathan.com/boyfromandromeda, and we will add that to the show notes for you. These days, Jonathan's focus is on encouraging children's literacy by creating picture books designed to spark children's imagination, encourage them to read, to follow their dreams, and never, ever give up. He collaborates with another artist, Richard Robertson, in jointly illustrating his latest series about a small bear with a very big dream called Goggles, the Flying Bear. His co-illustrator Richard is going to the moon. He is a professional landscape painter, and this episode of Color in Your Life, How to Paint videos is being taken by Elon Musk to the moon in the upcoming SpaceX Manned exhibition. Richard's work is being included in a time capsule, which will be stationed there by the astronauts. Wow, man, do you know the world? We are so happy to have you with us today. So welcome to the Writer's Parachute, Jonathan.
Really great to be here. Wow, what an introduction. I mean, I want to know who this guy is you're talking about. Well, yeah, you really got a lot of stuff in there. Well, yeah, Richard's stuff is going to the moon. Isn't that fantastic? Yeah.
That is so amazing. And it's like, it's kind of what you're talking about, is never give up on your dreams. It's like, who could imagine even having a dream of having any of your work go to the moon? It's like, it seems so outside of any realm, but that's what you and I,
I think surreal is the word you're groping for. Yeah, it's actually really going to happen. They put it in a time capsule on the surface of the moon. I can't actually get my head around that. Anyway, Richard and I get on really, really well. We're old friends, so we both think we've both got the same sort of aspirations and dreams and things. So that's why it works, Yeah.
absolutely.
So it's coming into autumn here, which is an upside down world. So yeah, it's, as you can see out the window there, it's usually very bright sun, but it's just getting a bit gray and rainy, but it never gets too cold here in the South Pacific. So yeah.
Well, that's nice, because we're just coming out of winter here. The last few vestiges of winter, we've had a little bit of rain here in California, but the rest of the country's had some snow and ice and rain and stuff like that. But it's okay. So you've had such great success with your book, your children's book, Goggles the Flying Bear, the series, and I just want to know what inspired you to create this specific character, because I have to tell you, I love the fact, and I'm going to kind of give away a little bit of hint here, but I love the fact that it's an amazing, adorable story, but you dovetail some actual historical facts in there too.
Oh yeah. Well, with Goggles the Flying Bear, I mean, I'll try and remember you asked about three things there. I'll try and remember them. The origins really of it are, when I was a child, I, of course, like all other little kids, had a teddy bear, of course. And he was absolutely gorgeous, this teddy bear. Given to me my grandmother. And my father immediately said, I know who that bear is. Now, my father went to Oxford. He was a highly educated type, and my mother was too. And he named the bear Aloysius. Aloysius is the bear who's owned by Sebastian Flyte, who's the aristocratic son in the Evelyn Waugh book, Bride's Head Revisited. And this is the bear of the sun, Aloysius. Well, I was only about age 3. I still couldn't get my tongue around the word Aloysius, so I called him Ali. You see, so I have always had this bear, Ali, and here he is here.
Oh wow, that's adorable. Looks like he's been on many adventures with you.
Yeah, stop it. Anyway, I said stop it. Anyway, he says he was actually looks in very good condition, because I had to take him to the bear hospital about 10 years ago and have him refurbished, so he looks like new. Anyway, I'll put you aside now. Is that all right? Okay, so that's Ali. See, well, what happened was, when I was little, I used to, since you asked about the origins of the story, the very first book I ever wrote and illustrated, this one entirely myself, was a book called Mr. Smudge's Thirsty Day. That's up on Amazon as well. And here's one of the illustrations I did inside the book there. I don't know if how well you can see that.
No, right. I think we can see it pretty well.
Yeah, that's pretty much the house we were brought up in. This old, rambling, shambling house, the garden all overgrown. We didn't have any money, so the garden all grew over. But I used to take my bear and fly it around the garden, right? Fly him like he's flying. Aloysius the Flying Bear. So that's roughly where the idea was stayed in my mind through childhood into adulthood. And I happen to know, of course, that everybody loves a teddy bear. So when I was thinking, now I'm going to do these picture books again, I'm coming back to being an author again after 10 years away from it, I thought, yeah, I'm going to do a bear, definitely. So Richard and I are both fans of flying. We don't fly in real aircraft, but flying remote controlled model aircraft. I don't mean a drone, because that doesn't require any skill. This is real flying. We have to operate the ailerons and pitch and yaw of the aircraft with a radio control. But the first sort of month of doing it, you always crash the plane, because it's too hard. But after a while, you get a grip on it. So, of course, the first people to fly were the Wright brothers in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Yeah.
Yes.
And on the flats there, so the Wright brothers. So I decided to get a family of bears together as the first bears to fly, called the Wright Bears. And so this is Goggles Wright and his parents. Now, the Wright brothers are Wilbur and Orville, and so these grandparents are called Wilma and Growlville. So it's it's a bit of a silly pun, really.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's sort of supposed to be what assonance, I suppose, really. But that's where it comes from. So every single book's based on that. Yeah, that's the origin of Goggles the Bear Who Dreamed of Flying. Here's the book here, the Goggles the Bear Who Dreamed of Flying.
It's an amazing book. I love the illustrations. They are so bright. And you actually have created a series for Goggles the Flying Bear that goes on to 2 more books. I don't know if you have any more planned, but what is the advantage of having a series of books when you're talking about pictures books?
Well, just circling back just for a second, that's the double page spread in the back of the first book about the Wright brothers.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a little bit of historical information in there as well. The series, you asked about the series. This is the second book, which is, Goggles and the Magical Bear Plane, where he gets his own plane.
Right.
It's actually a toy plane, but it magically becomes real. So it blows up. I know kids love all that sort of,
right.
Impossible
magical transformation.
Yeah, exactly. Transformation. Yeah, absolutely. I love all those little Transformer toys, still do. And then finally, it's just the last book is Goggles and the Teddy Bear's Picnic, where he and his family rescue the honeybees from a storm which blows over the beehive. They build the palace that you can see in the background there, which is made of beehives to help them. So that the bees put on a teddy bear's picnic for them, all full of honey. So those are 3 stories, but a series of stories. I believe it's very important, a series, if you're doing picture books, because here's the ABC. Yeah. Now there's the main character, Goggles. He's sort of dreaming of flying at that point because he's only got a little wooden plane. But that has actually got, let me see now. Yeah, there on the back, it's got this brand. Yeah, gold. That's a registered trademark. The reason for having a series is, this is quite obvious, and this is what JK Rowling did with Harry Potter. You buy the first book with a little bit of a cliffhanger or some sort of continuity in it there, and they'll want to buy the second and the third, of course, without you having to advertise them. So I spend money on advertising, a lot of money on advertising the first book, but not the second and the third one. They just sell themselves,
right? And
the ABC. So that's why a series is very important, but also not just that, that's to do with sort of sales continuity from an author point of view. But from a kid's point of view, they get to know this first character and like them, and they'd love to see more. And lo and behold, there's another adventure. So they can go and follow that, more of that. And then there's a third one, and they can go and follow that. And I think that's great for kids, that they can get to know and like and love a character. Another example, which I don't think it was supposed to be a series, is the Pout Pout Fish, and that's just a whole string of books that goes on forever, the Pout Pout Fish. So I'm slightly envious of that, Pout Pout Fish, because there's so many of them. These books that we do, Richard and I work on this, we jointly illustrate them, but they take so long to do each, like a year, that we only managed to do one a year. So we've just done 3 of them. I'm just going to take a pause and spend more time doing things like talking to you, Donna Cowan, and doing a bit of promotion and that kind of thing, which is, so a series, yes, a series has a whole variety of advantages for kids in particular, and for parents. You can sort of know that this is the kids love it, and it's going to be easier and easier as they read them and get enthusiastic about them. Yeah.
Right. And, I write a series, I write chapter book series. So, and what I find also interesting when I talk to the parents is that they become used to me as an author, and they become more trusting of me as an author, knowing that I'm going to regularly put out books with the same series, with the same story, and the same style that the kids obviously like. So I do know that parents that I've talked to are always happy to meet authors who do series, simply because it does build trust with that parent, not only with the reader, but with the parent that is purchasing those books for them.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Yes.
Yeah. So recently you talked about registering and copywriting your Goggles character. Sorry. And and also you have a few other trademarked items with that. So can you talk to us a little bit about what that process was and give us like any tips to make it easier if somebody else wants to try and do that?
Oh, it's easy. Just it is. Just go and do it. No, no, no.
Yeah, I don't believe you.
This is one thing you never want to tell people. Writing and illustrating and publicizing a book is just a bit of a nightmare, really. However, I think an easier job would be cleaning out the main drains, you know. But registering a copyright is not that difficult. You get a PDF of the book, you know, or if you haven't finished the illustrations, it actually doesn't matter. You can take the half-finished illustrations and the text, and you submit them to the US Copyright Office. If you go to Google and just type US Copyright Office,
Right.
it'll come up, and it's not too difficult to find on that site where you register your book. And you do that, and you then have to set up a little account, which is no more difficult, in fact, easier than opening a Gmail account. Doesn't cost anything. And you get a little password and you log in, and it says, well, what would you like to do? You know, so I want to register my text or the pictures. And you can go and upload it, pay about $60, and they careful sort of screenshots they give you as to how the process works. And if you make a mistake, it doesn't matter. They will write you and say, hey, you screwed that up. What, did you really mean this, or did you really mean that? They won't ruin it for you. So that they're really user-friendly, bit slow, but they're user-friendly. So that's the US Copyright Office. And when it's done and registered, which takes 2 or 3 months, because they've got a big backlog, they'll send you this really nice document, which is a copyright registration document. And you get that. So that's copyright registration. I've done that for each of these 3 books.
Right. Yeah, that was not what I was specifically asking back. I was talking about the specific trademarking and registering of your characters and your emblem and stuff like that. That was
right.
Well, you know, that's very good dissertation of how to go get a copyright. And I would just add to that, you know, at the end, when your book is actually published and printed, then you send them an actual printed copy, the best printed copy they asked for, and they put that in the archives to back up your copyright.
Well, as far as trademarks go, which is to do with the character, and you see, the thing is, if you illustrate a character and give it a name and put it in a picture book, the minute someone like Amazon publishes it, basically, if you've got the little copyright mark on it, that character is protected just right there and then. And all the illustrations and everything. Anybody tries to copy it, you can point back. So that book was published there first. It's mine. A trademark is something different. A trademark is really the actual name, like Goggles Flying Bear, like I showed you on the back of the book. I'll show you again. It's that there. Right. Well, that's that trademark there, a picture and words. It can just be words, but I always like to do both. And the value of that is that it is extreme level of protection of the character and the name of the book series, not the whole text of the book or anything like that, just the actual series brand. Like Harry Potter, that's a registered trademark with its higgledy-piggledy metal writing and etc. And one of the other advantages for authors is that you can, if you have that, you can then join the Amazon brand registry, and they will put the brand in the registry, and your book, if anybody tries to copy your books, they'll take it down instantly within 24 hours, or any other product you make that has your trademark on it like that. So that's another significant advantage. But I would say that authors are doing their first book, you know, and they've got a character that's not deliberately designed for series. It's just a charming story that's been designed. You probably don't need to bother with trademark. That's quite a major undertaking. That takes months and months and months and months. It costs a couple of $1,000s, you know, which is really expensive. So I haven't gone hog wild on trademarks because they're kind of expensive, you know. So I've got 2 of them. One is First Bear to Fly, because that's the sort of base idea behind these books. And then there's the actual character with, you know, Goggles Flying Bear. Those 2. That's enough for me, you know. It'll take a while to get the cost back for those. That's the reasons for doing those things. Just generally protecting the work. Trademarks very powerful indeed. Yes, anybody trying to copy that gets stamped on pretty quickly.
Right, which, and I've always been curious about that. A lot of people have asked me because my particular series has a four-member cast of characters that are very unique and stuff like that. And I've considered trademarking them, but I haven't quite made that leap yet. And again, the cost is a little off-putting sometimes
Probably
when
don't
you're
need
trying
to.
to
You probably
trademark.
don't need to. No, you really don't. I mean, I just was so laser focused on getting just that little circle with the bear and it trademarked, and it's there.
Mhm.
And because I will be using it for many other things, you see, so I'm just establishing it. It's deliberately done from the word go. Whereas if you're writing a story, you've got these characters you created. Copyright in picture books will do most of the work for you. Very, very difficult for people to copy it once it's published with your name on it, with that little copyright symbol.
Right.
It's
Yes.
well protected. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It is. But I mean, there's always caveats in that. So let's kind of shift back to the books a little bit. So what motivates you to write specifically children's books? Because I mean, I get the bear and I get the flying and stuff like that, but you could tell that story to pretty much any kid's audience under 15. So why specifically children's picture books?
Well, children's picture books have a certain kind of magic to them. They have. That's why Walt Disney called his entire empire the Magic Kingdom. It's a world of imagination. And the things that I like to develop in children and let them run wild with, catch fire, is their imagination. Because when I was a young dad, I was reading my two boys' picture books. I read both of them picture books for 10 years each, every single night. And so they're really well versed in picture. I have hundreds of picture books, most of them in pretty battered condition. But I mean, that was well done. So this encouraged me to write my own, because when you see the light in children's eyes when you're reading them these books and their imagination catches fire, I thought, I'm going to do that again and again and again. And in fact, I'm going to create them myself. And I put that aside for years, that idea, and finally come back to it. I'm doing it because if you can set fire to children's imagination, they begin to imagine possibilities and solutions through. It's not just a fantasy world, it's actually a practical skill that developed imagination. Oh, I see what the solution to that. See, Steve Jobs invented the iPhone. That took a huge amount of imagination. Kennedy said, we're going to the moon.
Mhm.
Huge imagination let loose in an entire country. Everybody works it off, it goes, and they land on the moon. It would never happen without the power of imagination.
Mhm.
Now, it's a two-sided coin, though, because the other side of imagination is what I like to put in my books and everywhere is inspiring kids to read, because that's why I list myself as a literacy advocate. I'm very ferociously interested in kids who cannot get access to books. I'll try and get them access to books so they can read. And once they can read, they begin to have huge advantages in life, through life, quite apart from the fact of, enjoying them at an early stage themselves and escape into those stories. This children's world is not an adult world. It's a world that needs to be protected and looked after. And, the harsh buffeting of the world can come later, and so it's get all these ideas and magic and things in place early and get them dreaming and imagining, and they can do it so much better if they're really good at reading. So that's why I'm such a strong literacy advocate, because it opens up so many things for kids. Yeah, and it makes the world a better place, all of which sounds quite Pollyanna-ish, but I don't care. That's how it is, folks.
If it is, I'm there with you, because what I think is, the imagination is kind of one of those things that's often overlooked, but it is what helps us find solutions when there aren't obvious answers. When you're reading books, it transports you to a different time and place, to a different set of circumstances and different obstacles and challenges. And then you follow with the author through that to learn something, and it stays with you. And what's great about it is because now you've gone on that journey, then you can imagine a solution when you're close to something similar. And the more you imagine, the more you think, the more you go on these adventures, as I like to call them, or capers, the more it stretches your mind to expand and think of different ways to solve a problem. It's like if you're in a tunnel and all you can see is what in front of you and what is behind and not what's beside you, it's really difficult to solve the problem, even if a
Well,
tunnel is 2 feet away.
I like the word you use, capers back there. Yeah, that's a ancient word, and I keep trying to find these lovely old words that have colourful caper. That's wonderful. Yeah, yeah. I think the imagination.
Yes,
Just
I love
you
to
get better.
call my books, a mystery caper, because they're young characters, and it's like it's not really. I mean, it's sort of an adventure, but it's a caper too, because they're out trying to solve things, and it's like it's crazy some of the options that they come up with, but that's how kids think. It's like,
They do.
let's try the most outrageous thing and see what happens, and
Now
sometimes
you're
it
talking.
works.
Yeah,
So
that's it. Yeah, it's a happy world. I think it's a great place. They say Pollyanna-ish, and like I said, I'm totally unapologetic. That's how it's going to be, folks, because this is very badly needed. I like to sort of get them into lower decile schools, because that's really where they're needed.
right.
Although, of course, goggles should be everywhere, of course. Anyway, that's the reason. That's what drives me to write these stories is, because I like to escape into those areas myself. But what's the actual mission? Oh, well, it's getting kids to read, inspiring to read, and once the imagination's let loose they're onto it. You can see it with kids, them waking up and wanting to read more. One of the authors sent me, other authors sent me a photograph recently. It's one of these great shots. There's this little boy, and he's all completely lost in the world of this book. And he's not even sitting in a particularly comfortable place. It's sort of jammed up against the end of his bed with this sort of duvet all around. And there's about 20 or 30 books shoved all up around him that he's been reading and trying this one and looking at that one, investigating that one, completely absorbed and lost in these books. This is an amazing world. I've still got that photo. I won't use it publicly, but one of the other authors sent me a picture of her 3 boys reading. Which book was it? Yeah, this one here, Goggles the Teddy Bear's Picnic. So I now used that photo with her permission at the top of my Facebook page and on my blog, and this 3 kids reading the book, because that's what I believe is good for kids, inspiring them to read. So that's everywhere. Yeah.
Well, and I do that, and you did mention one of my favorite topics about literacy is like a lot of times the problem is not that kids don't want to read, it's the availability of books to them. We do have a couple of programs here in the United States that I do like to mention because parents don't always realize that they're available. There are the free libraries. A lot of times, if you do not have a free library in your neighborhood, you can contact freelibrary.com and they will guide you into getting one set up for your neighborhood. Mostly it is donated, used, or new books from authors and other parents offering books to kids who don't have that access. There's also Reading is Fundamental. There's one in down in Southern California. I know they have different avenues across the United States, but you can just go to Reading is Fundamental and find the location closest to you. There's also a lot of literacy outreach that we do here in the United States. So if for some reason you're not finding that, I think if you go to your local bookstore, they could probably tell you where the literacy outreach is in your area for free books for kids. And of course, don't forget, the amazing Dali Parton is giving away books free to kids. So,
Yes.
yes. So, we
Number
do
one fan of Dolly Parton. Number one fan of Dolly Parton. She's just an amazing person. Like she's with these picture books. She's so natural with it. With a glorious southern accent, I suppose, that sort of show busy thing. It's she's a real gold nugget, Dolly.
Yes, she is definite jewel. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about part of what was the most challenging part in creating your books.
I showed you the picture book of Mr. Smudge's Thirsty Day with the Cat. I had to teach myself. That's a real cat that's based on a real story. The cat in that story really went on the adventure in the story. So neighbors told me they'd seen the cat, so I pulled it together into a story. But illustrating that, was incredibly difficult. I mean, I'm a fair draftsman. I'm pretty good illustrator, but I'm not a great illustrator. I'm no Michelangelo. I'm just pretty good. Yeah, that's about it. Good enough for the job. So I had to painstakingly teach myself how to illustrate cats. And cats are a weird kind of shape, you know, like you try and draw them so they actually look like a cat. So like here's one of them running away, right? You know, it's almost like the cat's wearing bloomers, you know, like it's, you know.
Well, see, you know, I'm not going to be critical because my grandkids, if I try to draw anything, they're just like, please, Grammy, put the pencil down. You're scary.
I know. Well, they're actually,
my stick figures are scary. It's like I don't do any drawing at all. Anybody that has any talent, I am in awe of.
oh, well, I mean, there's one particular illustration which I got right, and I know it was good. And there's this one here. This is the cat on the fishbowl. Right.
Oh, wow, that is awesome. Yes.
Yeah, that's a really good illustration of the cat. I got that one right. But it took me a while to, the cat actually patiently posed for these shots, of course.
Yes, of course they do.
Like cats do, you know. Yeah. So that's that. But the challenge is the illustration. I found it with the Goggles Flying Bear books so difficult to illustrate because the sheer amount of detail that needed to go into them. Tremendous amount of detail. And to get them looking that good, because remember, every single hair on the bear has to be painted, every single one, and of all the bears while you're doing it. So, and let alone stage the scene, and so on. And so what I did was I contacted an old friend of mine who was a landscape painter, Richard Robinson, who you mentioned. And Richard had never illustrated books ever, nor had he done sort of picture books at all. So I spent several months working with him to develop him up to the same sort of things I do, and discovered he may even be better than me. He's very good. You know, he's fantastic. So I would just sketch out. This is the difficult process we figured out because I found it so hard to do. I thought these books are never going to get out there. I'm going to have to split the work. And even now it takes us working all through the year to do one, you know, the both of us. So I start with a 2B pencil on Ziza matte, beautiful layout paper, and sketch and scribble and draw, maybe 100 different versions, throw them until I get to something that's right. I like, this is good. This is it. So then scan it into Photoshop and start painting. I use a Wacom tablet with a stylus and start slopping paint onto it and sketching around with it and then getting it about right. So send that to Richard. And Richard goes, oh, yeah, you've taken all of the work out of this for me. I just have to paint. So he brings his genius artistic skills to it and pours a lot of more paint on, cleans it all up, does the faces better, etc. Then sends it back. I go, no, that's not quite what I meant. No. I just fudge around with it a bit and get it better and then send it back again. And he does it. And we send it to and fro until we think, okay, it's time to abandon it now. It's never finished. You just, in the words of Picasso, you just abandon it at a certain point. So I then go in after that and do color corrections and push up color and put sparkles and stars and Disney style magic everywhere, you know, and to make them look absolutely glitteringly, fantastically, impossibly fantastical for the imagination, you know. So that's very hard work, that. And I found that the greatest challenge in creating the books was the enormous amount of work required. Writing the stories, yeah, you've got to get that right. You've got to minimalize those words. And you think you've got it down to the bare minimum, and then you suddenly discover you still haven't, you know. So anyway, I would say that's the greatest challenge in actually creating the books.
Right. And for those of you who don't know, it's like, you know, picture books can be anywhere from 100 words to 1,000 words, although the sweet spot is somewhere between 500 and 650. But again, a part of it is going to depend on how much space you have in the illustrations, because in picture books, typically the words are either accompanying the illustration or they are dropped into the illustration. And so, you know, a lot of times what authors find is that they have too many words to fit in with these amazing illustrations, which, you know, is why that, you know, author illustrators are a little better at that because they can sort of plan around what they want to put in there.
That's true. That's absolutely.
you do have those challenges. And I know even with me not having anything to do with my illustrations, my illustrator and I do kind of go back and forth, and that's just interpretation. It's like, I think it's amazing that he is an illustrator, or any illustrator can literally take my words and make them into a visual representation, which is amazing, which is kind of what picture books and children's books are all about. It's taking the words and giving them the clues and the cues from the pictures, which is very fascinating. And because children learn in all directions at once. They learn audibly and visually, and in through their imagination and what they hear and see and recognize. So it's an amazing thing that you do, and I'm very, very impressed. So we're going to talk a little bit about why you're here on the Writer's Parachute. We do try to help authors. So we all have obstacles when we're trying to get our books out there. So what has been the most challenging aspect for you with specifically children's picture books?
Well, I was just mentioning doing the illustrations. I mean,
Mhm.
each page, this is quite straightforward. Each book is 32 pages long. Sometimes they can go up to 40, but
Mhm.
it's just a sheet of paper with 4 pages to each side.
Right.
So that's 32 pages is a good number to work with, and just keep the words to a minimum and think about, how, as you say, how they will fit with the illustrations.
Mhm.
And they have to work together.
Yes.
I do believe that, I'll come back to your question in a minute about what's
Sure.
the most challenge, is that there is a story that doesn't work without pictures. Here's the story. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. What's missing from that?
Right. We don't know what Humpty
We
looks
don't
like.
know he's an egg.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm stating the obvious to you, because this would be
Mhm.
not news to you, but unless you had the pictures, you wouldn't know that.
Right.
So that's the most simplest example of the necessity of pictures. But
Mhm.
in any case, kids fill in the gap anyway, because they mentally move all the images you're doing.
Right.
As that, all of those things, though, are still just process and work and imagination. The
Mhm.
difficulty I had, the real challenge I had, to come back to your question, is that how do you get eyeballs on your book? How do you get people to see them? How do you get them to find them? This is marketing and promotion and advertising. That's the difficult part. That's the famous impossible journey that takes you to the far side of the moon and back. How the heck do you do this? And it's the greatest challenge of all. See, authors like me come up, do this great idea. I've got this great idea for a picture book, very exciting. Go and produce it or manufacture it. Go through all the challenges associated with that, get it out there. Now what? Nobody sees it. Now, that's not the right way to do it. You need to start planning your audience at the same time as you're planning your book, right back 2 years earlier.
Right.
And so how do you build that audience? Well, at the moment, with Goggles, The Bear Who Dreamed of Flying, and the series, I just advertise the first book, and then as people like the rest of them, that's the value of a series. But advertising is one thing, but a lot of people don't have much of a budget necessarily. So what do? Well, then there's this famous equation of speed, price, and effectiveness.
Right.
Choose any two.
Right.
So if you don't have any money, drop out the price. Oh, well, then you can then it has to be slow. You can't go fast. You can't have speed if you're going to drop out the price. So it's going to take a long time. Where's that time go? Well, you go into building up your social media following, and you put it into talking to PR people and journalists and magazines and mommy bloggers and all these kinds of people gradually. And I don't mean just throw your book at them and say, please review this. That's not going to work. You spend a whole year starting to leave comments on their blogs and communicating with them and taking an interest. And eventually they'll say, but you're actually an illustrator writer too. You say, yeah, well, what are your books? Well, here they are. Hey, I'll talk about that. That's how it works. It takes a long time, but that's where the investment goes, and it doesn't cost anything. So that's the kind of great tip I'd give about marketing, is just start a long time before to build all those relationships and keep on doing it, even when your books are out. On the way through, you say, but I don't have anything to show them because I haven't got a book. We say, yeah, but you can show them the bits of the illustrations as they're being done. And you can show them the mistakes you've made writing it. And there's all sorts of adventures on the way. Where do the ideas come from? I had this great idea, and it's actually coming along nicely. So there's already much more to talk about than you think during that process of social media and talking to influencers. With regard to influencers, you think, oh, nobody would want to talk to me like Oprah or the Kardashians or anybody like that. Probably not, but only a little bit below that, there are many, many stars, celebrities, and media people who, if you just start communicating with them gently, they won't pay much attention at first, but they say, actually, I remember this person has talked to me about 19 times now, and they always got something nice to say. They're always a great fan. They say, thank you. Hey, have you seen such and such? And you just open the door. You know, and you will get through. They're just people like everybody else. The big celebrity frontage is just that. It's a facade. There's just this person behind there who actually likes to be liked and valued and talked about and communicate with people. So, but that was the challenge for me, is how you do all that. And so, you know, I have a bit of a marketing background. So I was actually able to, I built a website called gogglesbear.com. And gogglesbear.com has all the books on it.
Right.
That's it. My own website, JonathanGunson.com, that's about more about me. But you can also get a free copy of Mr. Smudge's Thirsty Day there. That has a bit more of the history of all the things I've done before, including television commercials and TV shows and all those kinds of things. But they are all that's like a sort of a CV, you know, like a sort of press kit for publishers to go and look at, or for more like media to go and look at. So they've got something to go and see. That's the purpose of that. So there's those two sites. I sort of thinking of combining them into one, and I may do that, but I haven't made up my mind whether it's Goggles Bear or Jonathan Gunson. I'm quite sure kids are much more interested in Jonathan and Goggles the Flying Bear than me.
Right.
You know?
Yeah,
So,
it is difficult. And you know what, you know, you bring up a good subject. It's like what we're talking about today, you know, all of your backstory, you know, where you're talking about how you came up with your story, or how you came to want to write these stories, how, you know, you worked on developing your illustrations and frustrations and learning and joining and stuff. Like, these are all fertile ground that you can talk to your audience about before your book comes out. You know, you can share little tidbits from the story, talk about the characters, how you came up with their name, how you decided what they were going to be. Are they going to be a boy or a girl? Are they going to be, you know, an animal? Are they going to be a robot? You know, it's like all of these things are things that you can talk about, because honestly, your audience doesn't know your process. They don't know how you got there. And so these are very interesting topics to talk about. And I love the idea simply because it is not the buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book that we see so much of, which really honestly doesn't work that well. Is if it's constant, it's like it tends to turn your audience off and they tend to ignore you.
I noticed in the many of the author forums, you see this a lot. You just see a book cover and available now with a price and a description and nothing else. You've never heard of them before. And this is the very first thing people do. Well, like I say, it's like everything else. If you know, I'll give you an allegory, which is really useful. You know, this big ship, cruise liner, coming into the dock, and the sun is late in the afternoon. The water's all gold and glittering like this, and the people are excited to go ashore, and the dockers are waiting. The people on the docks with those huge bollards they tie the ships up to. You know, there's big iron stanchions they tie them to. And the guys on the ship have got the small rope with a big fat knot tied to the end, sometimes a ball of rubber. And they'll swing it around and around like this. And they'll hurl it out the side door of the ship down below. And you'll see it snake through the air and out and land on the dock. And the dockers pull this in. And attached to that is a much thicker rope, about as thick as your thumb, often made of wire. And they haul that in, two of them. Attached to that is the ship's hawser, which is as thick as your arm, you know, and that is what gets put over the bollard, and the ship then can crank that in with a motor attached to it and pull it tight. That's a little rope attached to a bigger rope attached to the main one will bring the ship in. So when you're starting doing like promotional things, you just start with just initial, carefully start, and then a bit more, and then a bit more, and then a bit more. And that's the sales process. I can't actually remember what triggered me to talk about this, to be honest. We were talking about something a second ago.
We were talking about how to market stuff, and I use a very similar analogy called the Evel Knievel method. You know, we talked about Evel Knievel jumping the Grand Canyon. Now, it wasn't successful, but I am quite certain that he did not just show up with his motorcycle in a ramp and just jump the canyon. No, he did some practice. He did some little, you know, thinking it through and doing little bits and pieces to promote it to get up to the back. So I talk about this in writing, but it also is very true in marketing. You cannot just go to the canyon and jump it in a single jump. That's not going to do you any good. So again, with marketing and writing, you have to talk about it in increments and build the the curiosity, the intrigue, the wanna, I need it. So it's a very good analogy what you're talking about. You know, you gotta start small and simple and build from that. It's called layering. We do it in writing, we do it in marketing. You don't just, when a character walks into the room, you don't just fully describe them at that moment. You do it in little bits and layers so that it kind of gives them more a three-dimensional effect, where it's the same thing. When you're marketing, you can't just jump out there going, ta-da, here I am, and then everybody's going to come running because they're like going, okay, well, ta-da, what?
Well, I've got this story I like to tell. You're absolutely right. I mean, that's really what it's referring to. Is you just have to gradually pick up, gradually get to know your audience. It takes lots of touches before they'll actually buy your book entire. I mean, if you picture a cocktail party, lots of people around. People tend to gather in groups at a cocktail party and talk amongst themselves of 5, 6, 7, or 8 people, all talking like this. If you walked in there to this cocktail party with your book and you barged into a crowd of people you didn't know, say, hi, buy my book. Well, what would they do? People do? They'd look at you and then they look at each other and then they sort of quietly move away from you as if you're mad.
The host is going, where's the security?
Who's this nutcase over here, like this? They won't want to know. So you have to kind of just introduce yourself quietly and spend time getting to know them. And then maybe they'll ask you a question. It's the same thing. I think we're going over it quite significantly here, but it is quite important. As you say, they just show up and shout. No, that's not going to work. It does require all this careful build. You called it layering. I reckon that's a very good description indeed. Layering, getting to know, layering. A lot of people just won't be that patient. Oh, somebody else can do the marketing. No, they can't. No, only you can do that. And anyway, the good thing is people want to know about the author. They want to know why did they do this? All those questions you asked me before. Like that's actually quite an interesting thing. After a while, one author I'm extremely protective of, I must say this, take the opportunity, and defensive of in all respects, is JK Rowling. JK Rowling, I'll go back here. See this book here? That's called the Merlin Mystery, right? I wrote and illustrated that 20 years ago, something like that. It sold 400,000 copies. Wow. It was a huge thing, right? And it's a puzzle book. That's got a prize in it. And after it was over, that's the end of that book. Well, I went to the UK, all the way from New Zealand. I'll try and keep this brief, otherwise I'll be here for a while. Then I went around all these different publishers, direct, myself, no agent, not really. And I walked in this beautiful little square called Soho Square in London, full of trees, like a nightingale saying in Berkeley Square, that kind of square. And there's a little garden house in the middle, like a Tudor building. And off to the side, there's this publishing company called Bloomsbury Publishing, a building there. And I went in there and I was sat in a little waiting area with my folder with all my pictures and book, that book. And eventually this woman came out, Liz Calder, and she said, Mr. Gunson, a bit like it waiting the dentist, you know. I said, yes. So I went in. She said, now what have you got? I said, well, there's this. She said, oh, this is just fabulous. I love it. These illustrations, must have been an absurd amount of work. I said, it is. You know what? We have a children's picture book division, but this isn't really a picture book. It's a more sort of adult thing. We don't really have a section for that. But rather than just sort of chuck you out and say, no, I've got a friend of mine who works at HarperCollins, or a publishing editor there. Her name's Jane Johnson. I'll give her a ring. So she rings her up. Jane said, yeah, send him over. So I went over to HarperCollins, right? And they gave me £100,000 just so that I wouldn't take the book anywhere else. That's how good it was. I think there was a lot of luck involved. Now, that's one thing. But the interesting part was when I left Bloomsbury Publishing, I went out, and there's these various authors, and I caught sight of a slightly attractive blondie woman sitting there with her packet of stuff, you know, waiting to go and talk to Liz Calder. I sort of exchanged glances, and sympathetic glances. Well, good luck, you know. That was JK Rowling bringing in, for the first time, Harry Potter to Liz Calder. She was the very first editor, and that was the first people to publish it then. So I think I crossed paths with JK Rowling as she was about to pitch Harry Potter. Right. You know? So I always remember that moment. Well, and then I thought, yes. So for about a year, I thought, yes, but I've done a lot better than you. Look at the scale of advance I got, because they gave her £1,500.
Right.
1,000. Well, I think JK Rowling had the last laugh.
Sure. Well, and and a lot of people forget that, while you did see her there at the publisher who did eventually publish her book,
that's right.
She had already gone to multiple, and I do mean a very long list of publishers who were just like, there's no market for this. Nobody can read this. It's not a kid's book. It's not an adult book. They couldn't classify it. It was like her journey was very long and arduous, and it took persistence and dedication for her to get where she is. So for all those people who believe that she just jumped into the scene and made this big splash, it's like, no. There were a lot of years of heartbreak and determination that she had to go through to get to that moment, and take less than she probably felt she was worth to get to where she is now. And it's a good lesson if people will actually look at the whole story.
Well, her instant success took about 10 years.
Yes, exactly. It's like it didn't happen overnight. So I wanted to ask you, was there any other new characters or new series that you have in the works? Because you seem like me, you're always working on something in the background. So can we get a sneak peek at what's coming next for you?
Well, we've stopped just doing the goggles books just for the moment, because like I said, we just got to put they take so long. So I've got to stop and actually put time into marketing, all of which goes against my own rules of making sure you've got your marketing in place before you begin. Well, we did that, but not enough. So I'm now building out of the social media side, so I'm doing that. So we won't be doing any more goggles books just at the moment, although we will come back to it. And we think we'll make the next one either about space or pirates. See, so goggles bear is sort of to do with pirate bears. Is fun, or pirate animals, or it's not a new idea, but it's just something for this character to do. We've actually already written the basic ideas for those stories. In fact, there's other ones to do with dinosaurs and other things as well. So that's in the pipeline, but that's quite a way off. Right now, I'm working on a chapter book series. I really can't talk about that, because I find that if I talk about it instead of doing it.
Well, can you just give us a little hints or little highlights about what it is now? What it is going to be around? You did say it was a chapter book, so can you tell us anything about the story?
I probably is a bit mean saying that, because it's a chapter book series. There's about 26 stories in it or more. That could be just an unending, but I do have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It arcs right over all of those, but each one is complete. And it's just some children in there who go on adventures. There's time slip in it. They go backwards in time, a long way back to the eras of like Pirates era and various others eras. But yeah, I'll talk about that a bit more soon. I wish I could sort of give more of a hint to it than that, but that's just
Sure.
what
I mean, it sounds sort of similar to, and no, I'm sure it's not exactly, but it was is a reminiscent of the Magic Tree House where they were sent on all these adventures. But this was more about something in a book, where yours is more about them actually going on the adventure after they get there, right?
Yeah. Well, I've actually been to the UK to do the research on this, and I was on the south coast there, all through that area of Hastings, Battle, Rye, and all the smugglers and pirates, and all through that area there. I just got incredibly lucky because, you know, I was saying before, celebrities will talk to anybody if you've got a reason.
Sure.
Well, I wanted to do the video of Goggles the Bear Who Dreamed of Flying, and you can find that video. It's a shortcut to it on YouTube, flyingbear.fun. So you go to, no, that's the book. That's the actual book on Amazon. The video is bearvideo.fun, not .com, .fun, bear video. And if you go there, you can see it. Now, I recollected from a long time ago a television series called Spring and Autumn, which is about a very elderly old Cockney sort of type of guy from London who sort of talks like that, you know, sort of lovely Cockney sort of accent, your brass tacks. So thick an accent, sometimes you can't understand what he's saying. And he gets together with a small boy aged about 11, who's also a Cockney, who's a bit of a tearaway or rebel like this. Because they're both rebels at the end of a two age group, the whole program's called Spring and Autumn. Well, little boy comes along and says, hello, mate. He said, what are you up to today? He said, I've just been on a date. He said, a date? You're only 11. He said, oh, no, she's lovely. What's her name? Sharon. Oh, and what do you do? Oh, I bought her an ice cream. And what do you do? I shove it in her face.
Oh, no.
He says, what happened then? Didn't I scream like this? So what are you doing here? So what are you doing here under the bridge with me? Well, I'm fishing. He says, I'm hiding because she's after me. I see. So I thought, such a lovely program. I want to know who wrote the theme music for it. It's an absolutely, completely and utterly gorgeous piece of theme music. So I found the titles on YouTube of this old TV show, and it says Paul Lewis. So I look up the website, and he's still around. So I just took the plunge and rang the number on the website, and he answered. This famous composer. And I got to know him a little bit. He said, hey, Jonathan, look, when you're in England, do come and have a cup of tea. So I went and had a cup of tea with him. And we talked about music. And I said, this tune here. And he said, well, I've got some other music if you want to use it. So I've used his music behind that video of bearvideo.fun. So it's strange how these things come together. But, yeah.
Like,
so
you are absolutely teaching one of my favorite lessons about asking and about being brave. It's like, we already expect the answer to be no. So what is the harm in asking? And as you said, you know, you found out, you looked it up, you gave the guy a call, and you asked. I mean, I'm quite certain when you made that phone call, you were expecting him to say anything but come over and have a cup of tea.
Exactly so, yeah.
But you never know what amazing things could happen if you just ask. And like we talked about before, people are people. They want to be loved as much as you do. So, you know, and we really do. It's like, it's the very same thing as when you have a fan come to you and talk to you about your book, and you're just kind of giddy and you don't really know what to say. And I think a lot of famous people are that way too, because again, what we think is extraordinary, they just think is ordinary. This is what they do for a job. It's like they, you know, they probably didn't go into it thinking, oh, I'm going to be famous. It's just what it is. So
well, if you've got a reason, a good reason to talk to people, that will be obvious to them that you're not just a sort of fanboy or something. You know, you've actually got a logical reason to talk to them. Immediately all the defenses drop and they take an interest. I could tell you one more. How are we going for time? I could tell you one.
We're doing great.
Okay, well, I've got one more thing I could tell you. This is really extraordinary. I always admired I was at one time, my intention was to be a famous painter. That's why I was going to be a famous painter. until I discovered I really wasn't quite good enough to be a famous painter, but I'd just be an okay painter. So anyway, I went to the UK when I was relatively young with my girlfriend, then is my wife now, and she and I decided to go and see if we could find some of these famous artists and see if they would talk to us who were alive at the time. And one of them was Salvador Dali, the famous Spanish painter. Him and Picasso were competed for ~1 position of the most famous artist in the world. And I found out that Salvador Dali lived in a little town called Port Legat out from Figueras in the coast of Spain there, on the Costa del Sol. And so in our little old combi Volkswagen camper van with no money and sandals and shorts and t-shirts and things, we went down to Port Legat. And on the hillside, running up from the sea, there's this great white building with mustard-colored beautiful doors and golden eggs on the walls and leopards and all sorts of things. I thought, that's got to be his house. So I'm standing in this piazza there with a cypress tree in the middle and the sun coming down. I look over and there's this elderly couple sitting way over there. So I wandered over there and said, do you know, that's Dali's house, right? I said, yes, it is. And they had a glass of wine and I said, well, is he here? They said, sit down and have a glass of wine with us, just like that. These people are, these elderly British couples. So, oh, that's very kind. No, you sit down. So we had a glass. So we actually know Salvador Dali quite well because he does live there. And we've been coming here for 20 years. So as far as he is concerned, we're just the neighbors, you see. I said, oh, I see. He said, come in and have a look. So they came in and Dali had signed the lampshade. He'd signed the fridge. He'd signed the sofa. he signed the ceiling. He just signed everything in their house, you see. I said, so you do know him? He said, yes, we do. He'll be here tomorrow and he will arrive in a big black limousine down by the sea. He'll get out and he'll walk straight up the piazza to his door. If you stand in the way, right in the middle of the piazza, he'll either walk all over the top of you or knock you out of the way with his stick. I said, well, I don't want to stand there. They said, no. When he gets close to you, go, Monsieur Francis, and your Andy Francis over there suggested I talk to you. And he'll look at us and I'll just give him the thumbs up because he knows who we are. So the following day, feeling like a complete idiot, I stand in the middle of this piazza. And sure enough, this big black limousine pulled up down by the sea. And this Salvador Dali got out of the car and unfolded himself. He's about 6'2". And he's got this big mustache like this, and he had a silver-topped cane, Malacca cane, and a perfect reefer jacket with silver buttons on it, grey trousers, and polished patent leather shoes. Absolutely perfect. Got out of the car and walked straight towards me. Like a slightly ferocious look on his face, walked straight towards me. He got within a few feet. I said, Monsieur Francis suggests I talk to you. And he looked over and this guy goes like this. He says, what can I do for you? What is it you want? I said, well, see, the thing is, I'm a painter. I am. But you are the most famous painter in the world. He said, I am. He said, so I want to know how you become that famous. So I can too. He said, this is very easy. I will show you something like this. And he grabbed hold of my arm, up here. He said, leaning right, he says, have a look all around like this. Look all around. And all around, all you can see is people with cameras and phones, all taking pictures of this famous person. He says, see that? I am like what do you call it? A waxwork. What is this place in London? I said, Madame Tussauds. He said, Madame Tussauds. He said, I am like a waxwork in Madame Tussauds. You see, like this. And they all want to see. So this is show business. This is razzle dazzle, they call it in England. I said, yes. He says, so this is the secret, not the painting. You see, razzle, this is a show business. This is marketing, you see. He says, this is what I do. I said, so you're not a very good painter then? You're just a great, he said, no. He says, no, I'm a very good painter draftsman. He said, but you do need the show business as well. And now you know the secret? I must go and buy the fish. And he turned around, he went back down to the sea again. All the fishermen boats were all pulled up to argue the point with them, and he bought some fish. And he came back up. He ignored me. He went back into his house where his wife Gala was waiting for him. Opened the door. I've never seen him again. So, like I say, if you ask to meet people, you'll get somewhere, and so on. And show business and marketing, see all this, and imagination, it's all steeped through everything. So to come back to that, I mean, inspiring children to read, for me, for all of these reasons, opens up all sorts of doorways to all sorts of adventures and all sorts of possibilities. And do be yourself when you're doing it.
That's it.
Trying to be somebody else that you're not, because that's too hard.
Right.
Because people will like you. You're interesting. You may not think you are. You are. You are. You're very interesting. So, I'm jumping around here a bit. You remember I talked a minute ago about music. There actually is another piece of music I had done. It's for this book here, Goggles and Teddy Bear's Picnic. Halfway through this book, because the bees lost their beehive in a storm, I got all the bears decided to build them a new one. So that's all the builders and electricians and plumbers and glaziers, all building the new palace. And while they're building it, they're singing a song called the Growly Growly song. And it was a race against time. So there's the finished palace there. Oh, it's all made of beehives stacked up. It's sort of like a Disneyland palace. So, so the song, the Growly Growly song, is literally can be found and listened to at growlygrowly.com. Growly is spelled Growly, but twice, growlygrowly.com. And so if you want to go and listen to it, it's there. And so I wrote that tune and recorded it in a studio with a friend of mine. Not quite so famous composer this time.
You have such an amazing life. It's like I could go on talking to you forever and ever, but we do kind of need to sort of close this out. So
I think so.
So where can your fans and other authors connect with you on social media?
Well, my page on Facebook Media, I've only just set it up, so it's only got a few hundred people, maybe just over 100 people now, is Inspiring Kids to Read. That's facebook.com, Inspiring Kids to Read.
Okay, and we will have the links in the show notes for you, but go ahead.
That's that one. And then I'm on Twitter as well. I've been on Twitter for over a decade, so there's now 124,000 people follow that. That's twitter.com, Jonathan Gunson. So you can go there. Okay. And finally, as I said before, if you want to go and have a look at the website of Goggles Bear, that's gogglesbear.com. So that's the contact points. I think that's them all. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So was there anything else that you wanted to let us know about or remind us before we get on to my tip of the day?
Well, as far as authors go, a tip, if you want to get more reviews for this is just a small tip. If you want to get more, this is a very difficult thing to do. If you say to someone, hi, look, I'm just releasing my new book. Could you leave a review? I believe that's a highly obnoxious question, because what's that person going to say? So if you think about leaving a review, this means you've got to stop what you're doing, read this damn book, excuse my language, read this damn book, and then think about it. Then you've got to go over to Amazon. Then you've got to find, you see what I mean? And then you've got to think of what you're going to say and then actually write it. The whole thing is just a pain in the butt, so when somebody says to you, leave a review, are they going to be really rude to you and say, no? Nobody's going to say that. They say, sure, I'll do that. So they go and ask 50 people. Then they launch the book and 2 people leave a review. Then they say, all those people who promised to leave me a review, they didn't. They're all a bunch of schmucks. No, they're not. If you asked an obnoxious question, that's not the way to get the reviews. The way to get the reviews is to get people interested early, starting 2 years before you start doing the book. So this is my team of people and you're on it, I'm sharing it. Hey, look, today I'm launching it. Now, look, reviews are always welcome, but please don't feel pressure to leave one. Just enjoy reading the book. I'd love to know what you think of it. If you can leave a review, great. If you don't have time, just don't worry about it. But even just a one line is great, but don't feel like you have to. It's not a problem, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be great fun. So go and enjoy the book, blah, blah, blah. That's the way to get the review question out. Never say directly. But that's just a tip. But it's a sort of softly, same old, long, I don't know what you call layering. Softly, catchy monkey. That's the way to get the reviews. It's all part of that early promotional process. Yeah.
Right. Well, some of the platforms are getting a little more savvy about that, because reviews are really king when it comes to authors and writers. So, I do know that most of the ebook platforms have the ability, once you finish reading the book, it will ask you and guide you to quickly just leave a review right there in that minute, which is very, very helpful. So if you're really pushing to try and get reviews, think about using your ebook for that purpose. I mean, ebooks are kind of an extra added thing. If you're publishing print books, then you know that you pretty much absorbed all the cost for those print books, and you get the ebook sort of as like a little extra. So it's not, you're not spending a lot of extra money if you're having to use that as a marketing tool, and it is much easier to use it to get reviews. That's what I found is, the ebooks are a little bit easier because it does take you at the end of the book directly to be able to leave a review pretty much on every ebook platform, which is nice.
Yeah, well, you can leave a link. You can put a clickable link in the back of the ebook that goes to the review page.
Right, but like I said, when you're for instance, when I was reading your books on Amazon Kindle app, it at the end of each book, it asked me, did I like the book? It asked me to give it a star rating, and then it came up once I did that. It says, well, do you want to write anything? Do you want to give the title? And then you just do it right then and there. You push submit and it's done. It's out there. So you got a review right then and there. It makes it so much easier for you. Do take advantage of these options. That does make it easier for your readers so that they can make that leap a little smoother. And yes, you can do the links, but that's probably one of the best ways that I've found. Some people will go ahead and release their ebook maybe a week or two early, just simply to get those ebooks out there, which do make it a little easier to get those reviews. So
you can actually offer the ebook to give it away for free in exchange for a review. And Amazon will allow you to do that as long as you don't say you must leave a review. You can say, this is an exchange for it, but it's got to be honest. It doesn't have to be a 5-star. It could be a 1-star. You can't control that. If you try and exchange it for a 5-star, you're not allowed to do that. No. You simply have to say, yeah, here's my book. I exchange for a review if you can. And they say, no, you can actually do it in exchange for a review, but you can't say it's got to be a good review.
Right. Nope. And I think the easiest wording that I've ever seen of that is to say, I have put my book up for free or reduced price to encourage more reviews.
Yes.
So that kind of gets you around everybody's rules. You're not saying, you have to, you're not saying, So that's probably the best wording I've seen.
Safer.
Yeah. So
very good.
And then, of course, we talked about this. Where can we find your books? You are only selling here in the US. Is that correct?
Yes, I just sell the books at the moment on Amazon.com, and they're all there. The 1, 2, 3 books plus the ABC, and also Mr. Smudge's Thirsty Days there. But it's really the Goggles books we're talking about here. The shortcut for Amazon, once again, is what was it?
Flying Bear Fun.
What's that?
Flyingbear.fun.
That's the one.
All right.
So if you go there, it'll take you straight to the page. Yeah.
All right. Well, and again, I want to remind everybody, we will have all the links, and he had a whole bunch of them. I have a list here that I have, make sure I get them all up, but he had a whole list here. We will have those in the show notes at the end of the podcast. So I want to thank Jonathan, but before we go, I'm going to let him hang out for just a minute, and we're going to pull the ripcord on our tip of the week. So this week, we're going to talk about marketing, which is sort of what Jonathan brought up about some of the obstacles he's run into. And he talks about the importance of starting early. And I want to go to the other end of that and talk about the cost versus profit balance, because that is a critical thing where you can very quickly and very easily end up spending way more money than you're ever going to make in profit trying to chase those sales. So again, while you're leading up to getting your book done, you want to do some marketing research about what works, what doesn't work, talk to other authors, talk to different marketing groups. But the number one thing is to have a realistic budget. You need to have a separate part of your book budget for marketing and promotion. It can get away from you very quickly. You can hire, of course, PR firms, but they don't work for cheap. Yes, they can get you on television, but I think you need to stop and think about where you are in the process. If you are a new author with a brand new book and you're going on television, you're probably not going to find your specific audience. Again, we talked about this. Just like the Evel Knievel and the boat analogy, start small, start in your local area, start on your social media platform with those people that are resonating with your story, with your book, with what you're doing, and expand out from there. Again, use your budgeting dollars wisely, because as I said, it can get away from you very, very quickly. I've talked to authors who spent $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 and they still aren't seeing the sales. So just a reminder, start early, make a budget, try to stick to it, make some plans. Of course, we always want to be a little more flexible in case opportunities do come up, but you have to look at it as a business. We are authors. We are in a business of selling and promoting children's books and reading and literacy. But at the end of the day, we still have to make it work, or we can't continue to write and publish books. So that was my tip for today. I am so glad that you were able to join us here on the Writer's Parachute, guiding writer and author dreams to a perfect landing. And again, thank you, Jonathan Gunson, for being here. Don't forget his book series. It is Goggles the Flying Bear. It's a 3-book series. He also has the free book, which is Mr.
Smudge's Thirsty Day. I mean, I just appreciate the opportunity to come and talk on your wonderful podcast.
Oh,
I just enjoyed every second. I love talking about the imagination, so thank you.
Well, I am so glad you were here with us today. And of course, be sure to check back with us next week. We'll be back with another guest, and we'll be talking about more about writing, authors, promoting books, and getting your work out there. So until then, have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye.